All right, what we have on the wall behind me here is what we call a ductless mini split. These are the most efficient, newest technology on the market for heating and cooling a home. What's great about them, there's no ductwork. So they hang on the wall, and there's multiple different styles of units. This is just one style. This is the most common style. We call it a high wall mount unit. The refrigerant is transferred from an outdoor unit via refrigeration lines to this indoor unit. Generally, you're going to install them one in every room or area that you want to heat and cool. They are heat pumps, they're all electric. They put out cold air, they put out warm air, hot air. They heat and cool a space, all energy efficiency, all electric. They qualify for local utility rebates in certain areas. Here in Sacramento, California, these qualify for rebates across the board. They also qualify for $2,000 federal tax credits. They really are an amazing piece of equipment. Here in America, we're not so used to seeing them. We're used to ducted systems. So this is a newer style of heating and air system that most Americans have not seen yet. But once they learn the benefits of them and how they really work, it really starts to kind of make sense how efficient they are and that this is the route to go if the installation is not too costly, right? So, you know, this is the unit. The biggest complaint really of why most people say they don't want to do a ductless mini split is just, well, you have to see it, right? It is on the wall and some people don't like the way it looks. Personally, I don't mind the way it looks. We're in a home right now where we actually installed 7 of these throughout the entire home. There used to be a full-on ducted heating and air system in this house. This house is almost 3,000 square feet. All the ductwork was under the home. We removed all of that ductwork from under the home and then we installed these guys. So a little bit more about this unit here. The airflow is coming right out of the front. The filter, where it breathes, is actually behind this little compartment here. So if I open this up, this is where the filter would go. We have it, you can kind of see it at the top there, right? But it pulls air in through the top over this coil, this kind of blue coil you see here. This is a refrigeration coil, and then it pumps the air that's been heated or had the heat removed and now it's cool into the home. So the filter goes there. Really, that's the only maintenance you have to do to them. They're great, you know. They don't come with a thermostat on the wall like a typical heating and air system. They actually usually come with a remote similar to this, and you can control the system from the remote. What I like about these is the blowers that's moving the air, right? They are multi-speed blowers. Right now I have it set on auto mode. You can see here it says fan auto. And what that means is it's going to ramp the fan speed, the blower speed, up and down as needed, depending on what temperature we want it to hit. Right now we have it set for 61. It's a hot day in Sacramento, and we want to cool down this room. If I turn the temperature up, you see the target on there start to rise. When it's on auto mode, as it gets closer to the desired temperature, the blower will actually automatically lower its speed. Now what's cool is you can manually tell it what speed you want. So this particular model has a fan button here. You hit the fan button, okay, and it changes the speeds. As you can see, this is fan speed number 1. If we get close, still actually ramping down even more. Just use this to illustrate. Okay, you can see it's not blowing very hard, right? If I hit the fan button again, and we go up to speed number 2, it will slightly start to increase the airflow. And so on and so forth, right? We go up to speed number 3. Give it a second. There it goes. Starts to blow a little harder, and so on and so forth. Go to 4. This is speed 5. And then eventually, some models actually have a turbo. This one says turbo here. Hit the turbo button, and what that's gonna do is really pump it out as fast as it can. What's also cool is these levers here, you can control the direction of these units. So if I push this button here, you can see the louvers start to move, and now they're pointing more down, so they'll actually blow directly onto you as opposed to across the ceiling, right? If we push it again, you can stop it wherever it's at. If you like, okay, that's where I want my air to go, you can stop it. If I push it again, it puts it back onto auto rotate. You can leave it on auto rotate and it'll actually just ramp itself up and down like that, pushing the air across the room on the ceiling, middle of the room, or along the floor if you have it point down. So really great piece of equipment. Most of these models, you can set a timer or a schedule from here. This particular brand is Tosa, which is made by Gree. Really just a lot of features, a lot of control. The biggest benefit of these is energy efficiency. Because there's no ductwork, most of these, the SEER rating starts at about a 16 SEER. If you don't know what a SEER rating is, SEER is it's an efficiency value that is assigned to a piece of HVAC equipment to rate how efficient the equipment is. Think of it like miles per gallon to a car. So the higher the SEER rating, the more efficient. This model here is actually a 21 SEER. Comparing that to most ducted air systems in a traditional home in America, most systems in America are 12 to 14 SEER. If you have a 16 or an 18 SEER ducted system in America, that's considered high efficiency for a traditional HVAC system. These things, they make models that get up to 38, sometimes even closer to 40 SEER. So, you know, comparing this house's energy bills from a ducted system under the house to now having mini splits throughout the home, it's gonna cut down those energy bills. I mean, minimum 50%, what we've seen is more like 70 to 80%. So tremendous savings. The really only cost part that comes with installing these is just the installation itself, right? I'm gonna show you the outdoor unit in a second, but each of these indoor heads in this house, there's 7 of them, has to have electrical power ran to it, and it has to have refrigerant lines ran to each system. This particular home, you can see the house is actually under construction. So what we did is before the walls were closed, we put all the refrigerant lines and electrical inside the wall, had it run down and under the home. We can also do this where they go up into the attic space. All of that electrical and refrigerant lines have to connect to an outdoor unit, right? So depending on the setup of your home, doing mini splits for the entire home can be costly from an installation standpoint. Just because it's a lot of work, right? Depending on the setup. Some houses are easier than others. This particular house was very difficult. This house was built in the 60s. It's located in East Sacramento. And there was a lot of just custom ways and things that were in the house that prohibited us from running refrigerant lines certain ways. I'll actually show you how we ran refrigerant lines to one of the bedrooms, about 150 feet worth of refrigerant lines through a wall, through a floor, through the garage, and eventually to the outdoor unit. So, you know, you will pay more depending on how many heads you have to have this piece of equipment installed in your home. Doing a 2-head mini split or 3-head can be affordable. Once you kind of get to that 4, 5, 6, 7 head range, the price tends to go up dramatically, not just in equipment costs, but also in that labor. You know, this particular home doing 7 heads, it did qualify for local rebates. We're able to get $4,500 in rebates paid for, but even with those rebates, this was a $20,000 plus job to have this installed and fully operational. Come on with me, I'll show you where we put some other ones. If we come this way, so here's another bedroom over here. This is gonna be used as an office space. So as you can see, we have a head there. This one actually hasn't even been turned on yet, it's still wrapped up. You know, so we put one in each room, and each one is individually controlled, right? This is gonna be a guest room. So if you have guests staying over and maybe they, you know, in the summertime, they like to be freezing. They like it at 72 degrees, you like it at 74. Well, they have full control over the room they're staying and separate from the rest of the house, which is really nice. Also, this particular house, there's only 2 homeowners that are going to be living here, a husband and wife. And they don't have any kids, so a majority of the time when they're home, it's just them. So at night when they go to sleep in the master bedroom, they can shut off the rest of the house. They don't even have to run it, just run the master bedroom, or during the day, they can just run the living room or whatever areas they're going to be in the house, which also adds to the energy savings, right? Because instead of heating and cooling the entire house, you're only heating and cooling a small portion. If we come over here, so here's another style, okay? The one we just looked at is the most common. This is a floor mounted. Now I say floor mounted, it's actually hovering off the ground by about an inch or 2 down here. If you look underneath, it's not actually sitting on the floor, it's mounted to the wall. Also referred to as a low wall mount, but essentially the same thing, right? For this room, if you look behind me, this is a rather large area, a lot of volume. This is about 1,000 square feet here. And as you can see, the ceilings go up. This house has a flat roof, okay? There's no attic space here, and we have large windows in the back, which really add to the heat load. So, you know, a little bit of a challenge figuring out how are we going to effectively heat and cool this room, especially in the summer. Here in Sacramento, summers reach 110, 115, sometimes 118 degrees. will we be able to keep this room cool in the summer and vice versa in the winter, right? We want to be able to keep this room warm. So we put 2 of these, one here, and there's another one in the back corner over this way. You can kind of see down there, right? And we sized these appropriately. That's something else to understand about these units. Each individual head has its own BTUs. BTU is a measurement of basically the heating or cooling power of this piece of equipment, right? A BTU is a British thermal unit. That's how we measure units of heat. In the summertime, we want that system to be able to remove a good amount of BTUs, enough BTUs to cool the house down. So making sure these are sized appropriately for the room spaces is extremely important. Otherwise, it will just run 24/7 and never hit temperature. Luckily, we tested these out on a 90+ degree day, and we were able to get this entire area down to about 73 degrees, which was very good given the volume, the windows, no attic insulation and things like that. So this guy here essentially works the same exact way. Has a remote, you turn it on. It's going to do its startup, and then we'll put it in what mode we want it. So this is cooling mode, you have a humidity mode, you have a heating mode, right? You can also just run the air if you just want the fan to blow. You don't want it to actually run the AC, which is nice. So I put this one on cooling mode, turn the temperature down, give it a minute or 2, it'll turn on, it'll start to ramp up. Actually, I already have airflow going here. Proceed here, simulate that. You can see it blowing, all right? Right now I have the fan on auto. Okay, it says auto at the top up there, but I can turn it on, just put it on speed number 1. And I don't know if you can hear it, but it really starts to ramp down. Multi-speed, keeps the rooms comfortable. You turn them on when you need them. If you're in this area, you can run it. If you're not and you're asleep in your master bedroom, you turn it off. You don't have to worry about the rest of the house. High efficiency, quiet. Really, there's not much components to these, so you don't really see a lot of breakdowns on these compared to traditional heating and air systems, right? And because there's no ductwork, I mean, it's very simple. You just have refrigerant lines coming in, you have an evaporator coil on the indoor unit, and you have a blower motor. You have the controls, right? A little remote and a computer, but that's about it. So, you know, maintenance is really just keeping the filter clean and the outdoor unit clean, which I'll show you next. Breakdowns are not super common on these as long as they are installed properly. That's the biggest thing, right? Something unique about these units from an installation perspective, most of them are torque fittings, right? Or flare fittings. So you actually have a refrigerant line that has a flare nut and it has to be tightened to a very specific amount. Comparing that to a traditional HVAC system where we braze in copper to copper, it's a different installation process. So you really want to make sure that whoever is installing this, one, owns and knows how to use a torque wrench, right? The manual is very specific on how tight they want those flare fittings at the refrigerant line connections. So if you do them too tight, and I've seen that many times, guys just grab a wrench, they get it as tight as they can, they do a pressure test and it's not leaking right now, and they'd say, okay, we're good, but 3 months in or summer hits and these things are running at full speed, it was not tightened to the correct specifications, and now a leak occurs. The number one thing that breaks these units down are refrigerant leaks, right? Outdoor refrigerant leaks, indoor refrigerant leaks, most of the time are due to either incorrectly tightening the flare fittings, either too tight or too loose, or they just didn't line up the piping correctly. Maybe they went at an angle, they're in a tight spot, or they're rushing and they did it at a certain angle where it did not get a tight fitting. So, you know, the number one thing I can say to people when I talk about these units, everyone wants to focus on brand. What brand is it? There's hundreds, if not thousands of brands out there. I mean, Mitsubishi, Fujitsu, this is a Tosa, you have Gree, you know, Mr. Cool. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. There's so many. And as long as you get a good warranty, that's great. But really, what depends on how efficient these things are going to run, how are they going to behave, are they going to work, is the installation. I cannot stress that enough. You could give me any brand here, I install it correctly, and you put it up against a really popular name brand system that's installed incorrectly, the off-brand system is going to last longer, run more efficient, heat and cool, keep the house more comfortable than the name brand system. The installation is what it's all about. So if you're thinking about getting one of these, make sure you vet your contractors, not just the company itself, but who's actually going to be doing the installation work. That's what matters. Whose hands are going to be on there? Are they using a torque wrench? Do they know how to properly charge, refrigerant charge a mini split system? Or are they just using the beer can cold method and guessing, right? That's the most important part that will make sure your investment on a mini split system lasts as long as it's supposed to. This job here, 7 heads, it was $20K plus. It's a beautiful $1 million home in East Sacramento, and we want to make sure that these are going to run the next 15 or 20 years with no issues, right? And to do that, we had to install them properly. So pick your contractor very carefully. Okay, let's go look at the outdoor unit now. So all of these heads connect to an outdoor unit. Sometimes it's one outdoor unit, depending on how many heads you have, 2 outdoor units. This particular project, we decided to go with 2 outdoor units, and that's for a reason. One, the house is fairly large, so the first unit we looked at is completely on the other side of the house. So to get refrigerant lines and electrical lines from there all the way to here is a very, very long run. The longer the refrigerant lines, the less efficient the systems behave and operate. So we wanted to put 2 systems, one on one side, one on the other, so we could make sure that we get maximum capacity. The other reason is we talked about earlier BTUs on a mini split system, right? Let's say, for example, you have 3 heads and they are 9,000 BTUs each, which is a common size for a bedroom for a mini split system. You add all 3 of those up, that means you have a total of 27,000 BTUs. Okay, if you're just running 1 head, you're only using 9 BTUs, that's fine, but all 3 of those heads connect to the same outdoor unit. So you have to go for worst case scenario, right? Worst case scenario, it's a hot summer day, all 3 heads are running on full blast. That outdoor unit needs to be able to handle that demand, right? And it's very simple. You add up the BTUs. In that example, 3 9K heads gives us 27,000 BTUs, right? Outdoor unit needs to match that. We need to make sure we have at least 27,000, if not more, BTUs on the outdoor unit in case all 3 of them are calling for the same time. This is another thing I see with salesmen and contractors is they might undersize the outdoor unit and the homeowner has no idea, and it's not an issue until they have to run all the heads at once, and now all of a sudden this unit that you're used to cooling is not cooling as much, right? Because if you undersize the outdoor unit, the system will still operate, right? Let's say, for example, this only had 24,000 BTUs, right? And I have 3 9K heads, I turn them all on. All 3 of them are going to turn on. They are going to produce cool or hot air. However, they're not going to be running at full capacity, right? Because we have 3 9K heads, it's calling for 27,000 BTUs worth of power. If the outdoor unit's sized for 24, then the outdoor unit can only handle 24, right? So if the outdoor unit's running all 3, that means it's going to split the difference between all of them, right? You're gonna actually have each head running at 8,000 BTUs, 8, 16, 24, versus the full 9,000 BTUs, because the outdoor unit simply cannot handle the demand. So it's really important that the outdoor unit is sized appropriately, something that we do at Atticman before we sign a contract for any mini split job. We have a calculator that we run it through, and we have to verify and confirm that that outdoor unit can in fact handle all of the BTUs from the indoor unit's demand, right? If you take a look here at this one, this is the outdoor unit. What's inside of here is a compressor, a fan motor, and another coil. You can see the coils on the back, very similar to the coils, how they look on the indoor unit. We have a fan motor here on the front that's currently blowing, as you can see from my shirt. The compressor is on, it's super quiet. Honestly, you don't even know this thing's on unless you walk up to it and physically see the fan moving. That's how quiet they are. You have no clue they're even running. But the compressor is pumping refrigerant right now to that indoor head that I have calling. And the fan motor is moving air from outside over the coils and blowing it out. I actually have warm air blowing out of this unit right now because the unit is in cooling mode, right? The indoor unit is calling for AC, so it's taking the hot air in the house, okay? It's passing it over that evaporator coil, and the indoor coil is actually absorbing the heat. The heat is transferring from the air into the refrigerant. Refrigerant is a vehicle for heat, and it's being carried outside. Now that heat that's been pulled out of the air into the refrigerant travels outside. There's refrigerant lines that are covered up. This cover is required for code. And it's going into here where the refrigerant's actually being compressed and the heat is being released. And then we have the airflow over the coils, picking up that heat, and throwing it out. So just like any air conditioner, the way it operates is in cooling mode. It's taking heat from inside the house and it's transferring it outside. If you had your hand felt here, you'd actually feel warm air coming out. That's the heat from the house. Now these are heat pumps, okay? And heat pumps, there's no gas. I mentioned earlier, these are all electric, right? So how does a heat pump heat a house if it has refrigerant, right? It's a common question that I get all the time. We think naturally cold refrigerant lines, how does that produce heat? Well, just as the AC is transferring heat from inside to outside, a heat pump does the same exact thing, but the flow of the refrigerant actually reverses. The outdoor unit now starts to absorb heat from outside, puts it into the refrigerant and the heat transfer to inside where the heat is dispersed inside. It's just transferring heat from outside back to inside, right? You know, another common question we get there is like, well, how does that work if it's cold outside? Which is a fair question. There's a video you can watch on how heat pumps work, and I can go more into depth on that. But the short answer is, even if it's cold outside, if it's 40 degrees out, 50 degrees outside, to us, that's cold because our body temperature is 98 degrees. We go outside on a 40-degree day, we're cold, right? But there's still plenty of heat in the air that makes it 40 degrees. Because if there wasn't heat in the air, we'd be in the ice age, right? So yes, to us it's cold, but that doesn't mean there's not heat in the air. There's plenty of heat in the air. Even in the wintertime, these things can actually operate at below 0-degree temperatures. I mean, literally it can transfer heat, you know, in the snow and transfer it inside because there's still plenty of heat in the air. Outdoor unit absorbs the heat, transfers it inside, and it comes out. We did a temperature test on this particular unit the other day, and we actually had heat coming out of the indoor unit about 110 degrees, which is very, very warm. And that was on a pretty cold day, and we didn't even have it at full demand. They can actually blow out even hotter. They work really well. The technology's there, they're proven. You go to Europe, you go to other parts of the world, they're all over the place, and now they're making a foothold here in the United States. If you're thinking of upgrading or replacing your heating and air system, going with mini splits might be the way to go. If you're located in Sacramento, California, call Atticman. We can come out, we can give you a bid. Our bids are competitive, but more importantly, we do it right the first time. We want these things to be installed exactly how they're supposed to, pass inspection, run for the next 15, 20 years with no issues. And as long as we install it correctly, it will do that. So give us a call. We can come out and give you an estimate. And yeah, mini splits, they're awesome. All right, thank you.